Hi everybody, it's Grid21, back with another video. Today I'm creating what will hopefully be the most complete and I hope the most detailed and understandable guide to creating a really good home-hosted Minecraft server and hopefully make one for a cheap price, maybe. So I'm going to break this video up into, I think I wrote down about 4 different things. First we're going to talk about the hardware, we're going to talk about the operating system, then we're going to talk about internet connection, Ethernet versus Wi-Fi, and then we're going to talk about custom IP addresses. So let's begin. So let's talk about hardware first. When I first started running my first Minecraft server, I ran it off my laptop. My laptop was 2 gigahertz in speed, had 4 gigabytes of RAM, and ran Windows 7 32-bit. I'll be talking about the bit version a little bit in the operating system section. While this wasn't bad for a server, the problem with it is that it was a very poor performance server. The reason being was about 3 different reasons. One of them was I had an external monitor plugged into the laptop. So there's my first fault. I'm asking my computer to basically split my video memory with 2 different screens, and to some extent has some play on the processor performance. The other issue was that I had the hard drive that stored my Minecraft data, or that is my server data, on an external hard drive that was a IDE to USB bridge adapter. For those of you who know what IDE is, and for those of you who don't, allow me to explain. IDE was a older connection type. It was a serial connection between a hard drive and generally a motherboard that you would plug it in internally. Excuse me. So that made for very poor performance. The third problem was that I was trying to run the server while doing other programs, say like video editing and running Minecraft client. So all of these together made for the worst, horrendous Minecraft server you could ever possibly connect to. It would connect great, it would work well for me, but for those that entered into the server, it wasn't the best connection. Another reason was that I was also connected to my local network via Wi-Fi, and I'll actually talk about Ethernet versus Wi-Fi later. So, with all that said, you're probably thinking, man, you really don't know what you're doing. Actually, at the time, yeah, you would have been right, but not anymore. Allow me to explain what is good hardware. Good hardware nowadays is anything that is around the 3 gigahertz processor speed and has about 16 gigabytes of RAM, probably running at like 1333 megahertz. And sometimes above that if you overclock, which this is not an overclocking video. You can go watch another video about that. This is about microservers. So with that being said, that makes for a good server and really nice performance. But most of us, depending on who you are, may not have that kind of good computer. So I'm going to be talking about more so what makes, I guess you could say, an affordable computer that's not that bad. The server that I have now, that is to say, the server that I run 2 Minecraft servers off of, the specs are as followed. It's a 1.80 gigahertz processor. It's an Intel processor. I'm not sure exactly which model. I think it's one of the Core Duo ones. It has 4 gigabytes of memory running at 800 megahertz. That is, the modules are running at 800 megahertz. Not too bad a speed. It has a 1 terabyte SATA hard drive, and the size of the hard drive also has a lot to play in as far as the virtualization of Java. The way that Minecraft works is that excuse me, I have a bit of a cold today. The way that Minecraft works is that it caches away a certain amount of memory to create what's called a virtual environment. So basically, it's known as JVM, or Java Virtual Machine. So the computer will create this virtual machine to run the Java files that contain all your server data. This is sort of a very, how should I say, scratching the surface type of way of explaining it. Excuse me again. So for a more detailed guide, I would either A, go look it up on Google, or B, you could probably read more about it on the Bukkit forums. I'll try to, if I am able to, I will try to find a information explaining that. I need to get my list out again, excuse me. I have a whole list that I wrote down of things I was going to talk about. So, stepping away a little bit away from that, for the specs that my server is, it actually performs quite well. Considering the fact that I'm running 2 of these, and 2 of the servers are running at 2 gigabytes each. Now, you're probably sitting there scratching your head going, okay, he just said the server has 4 gigabytes of RAM. His RAM is probably getting hogged up a lot. Actually, surprisingly, no, it's not. At the most, according to Task Manager on the computer, I'm only using about 2 gigabytes of RAM, even though I'm running 4. Why does this work? Because it has something to do with how Java creates its virtual environment. And I see that my battery is dying, so please allow me to quickly change it and I'll be right back. Alright, battery change, now we're back. Okay, so, as I said, according to Task Manager, I'm not using that much RAM. And that, like I said again, has to do with the virtualization. Also, I'd like to make the note of that, depending on the operating system, which actually, let's talk about operating systems while we're talking about hardware, because they pretty much coincide with each other. The first server that I used to run was running off of Windows 7 Home Premium 32-bit. Now, the reason why I emphasize on 32-bit is because the bit version has a lot to play in with the memory. In theory, 64-bit can actually handle up to 1 terabyte of memory. Now, you're never going to see a computer, at least a home computer, that has 1 terabyte of memory. If there is one, I would be more than happy if somebody showed it to me. That would be amazing. But the bit version has a lot to do with it. 32-bit can only handle up to 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64-bit can handle up to 8 gigabytes, and beyond that. I think newer motherboards handle up to 64 gigabytes of RAM. So that's kind of a lot of RAM. If you have a 32 gigabyte server, you must be running Bungie servers or something. I'm not sure which. Or a lot of plugins or minigames, or one of the 3. So, Windows 7, which is what most people are running, and also this applies, what I'm about to tell you also applies to Windows 8.1 and possibly Mac, although I'm not quite as familiar with how Mac handles its memory. Little side note, Mac is coded off the backbone of Unix, which was an earlier coding that it was an older base coding that people used to use, and actually still use today to create operating systems like Linux, i.e. would be example of Ubuntu is coded off Linux, and the source code for it originally is Unix. So Windows 7 is not really the best for handling it's not able to handle Minecraft servers that well. But that doesn't go without saying that you can do it. It's just going to take a little bit more physical RAM to create your virtual RAM. It just depends on how it's being handled. It also depends on like I said, on the bit version. Ideally, it would be really good if you ran your server that was 64-bit. The server I have next door, it is running on Windows 2003 server 64-bit. And that's why it's able to, I believe that is probably a great majority why it's able to handle 2 Minecraft servers at once. So those are some general things you should be looking for. So again, let's go over this. You're going to be looking for a computer that has 3 gigahertz in processor speed. Whether it's AMD or Intel, that's personal preference. You're going to want to look for a computer that has at least 8 gigabytes or above. The operating system is more of a personal preference. Some people may use Mac, some people may use Windows 7, some people may use Windows 8, some people may use even Linux. I think the easiest way to run a Linux server is to actually use Debian, because it's the most, I guess you could say, the most noob-friendly, that is the most newbie-friendly operating system. Debian is completely free. So say if you bought a computer from like Tiger Direct or Best Buy and you wanted to run Linux, you could just easily wipe the operating system and just put Linux on it, or you could do a dual boot thing. Depends on what you want to do. So that's it for at least the operating system. Because of how different operating systems handle different RAM, will determine how much RAM you can assign to each server, and will also determine its processing speed and ability. So even though you could have a 3 GHz processor computer, it may, depending on what the operating system is doing at the time, it may actually like affect performance. So that's just something to sort of play with and see on your own what you feel like works best for you. Something else to consider is that, so now we've got sort of the ground understood as what makes good hardware. Let's talk about the actual Bukkit server itself. So we'll make this another section. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about Bukkit. Now, I am in no way the official authority of Bukkit. If you want to learn more about Bukkit, I would definitely suggest going to bukkit.org, where you can learn a lot more information. I'm just going to briefly talk about my experiences and what I have come to find. As far as what you should put or use in Bukkit is really up to you. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. One of the things you should always be careful of is that being that Bukkit is open sourced. Open source means that a community of people work on it together. So a lot of people would know people like Warren Liu, who's the head team lead of Bukkit. You know, him and his group of people code Bukkit and work on it, and etc., etc. And then you have people that make plugins for Bukkit. One of the things you should always look out for is plugins that have what's called memory leaking, and that's where the plugin is not, the base code is not very solid, that it handles the memory the way it's supposed to, and therefore you have what's called a memory leak issue, where you're basically, the RAM is not being utilized the way it should be, and the RAM is sort of, I guess you could say, virtually being spilled out. I don't know if you've ever seen, some of you might have seen in your console for Bukkit, depending on where you're running it, and obviously if you're running it at home, you would definitely see it. It might spam like your console with like a lot of Java errors. We know what that looks like. I may put a screenshot like now or something, and you can see what it looks like. So you would have memory leak issues, and the problem with that is that as your console is like rolling and being spammed with all these, you know, Java errors and stuff, the server is more worried about the fact that it's leaking memory than it's about, saying, performing efficiently. So that's why some people may say, oh, the server has lag. Well, you might want to check your console to check if you have any memory leak issues. If you have any memory leak issues, it's really essentially there really isn't anything you can do. The best thing you can do is just simply get rid of the plugin and not use it at all, or go tell the developer, hey, I found this error and this is what it's giving me. What do you suggest I do? Or they might take note and try to recode the plugin better. I'm not going to name any specific plugins that have these issues, but there were a couple ones that I liked using, but the problem was that the way they were coded, they were not efficient, and Bukkit is designed to already run efficiently, and the problem with it is that as you add more plugins, you're sort of weakening, not necessarily weakening, but you're taking out the efficiency and speed that Bukkit is designed to run at. So that's something to look out for. So let's talk about one other essential key thing of running a successful home-hosted server. Ethernet versus Wi-Fi. What's the difference? Which one's better? I used to run my Minecraft server on Wi-Fi. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. And while this is not bad, the problem with that is that most Wi-Fi networks, I think, and depends on the computer, most Wi-Fi cards and computers nowadays, at least, well, I haven't checked it since recently, but my laptop specifically, at the time I was running the internal card, which only gave me a transfer rate of 0.54 megabits per second. That's kinda slow. The next upgrade I sort of got was a Wi-Fi dongle that gave me 0.76 megabits per second. Better, but not the best. So the best connection you can give your computer is straight up Ethernet. Basically, I don't know if you guys have seen an Ethernet cable, and actually, allow me to quick grab a Ethernet cable and you can see what this looks like. I should have thought to grab this earlier, but this is Ethernet. So, if I can, I don't know if I can get to zoom in or not, it depends on where the focus is. Well anyway, but this is an Ethernet cable. This will provide you the best, fastest connection to your computer you can get. Most routers run at 100 megabits per second, and sometimes actually a full gigabit per second. If you have gigabit Ethernet, you're extremely fortunate. So your internal networking does have quite a bit of play between the amount of time that your players connect to your server and the amount of times they get sent back, and it has to do with how the transfer rates are. 100 megabits is actually pretty decent. I have friends that connect to my Minecraft server that live in England, and they've actually said that the connection was fairly decent. Now, that doesn't go without saying that even though 100 megabits is good internally, you also have to think about what is your upload and download speed of your internet service provider. My internet speed, I think, is around or supposed to be around 3 megabits per second download, and it's actually 0.76 megabits per second upload. That's not the best, but it depends on where you live and who your internet service provider is. Ideally, you would want to have one that's got, oh my gosh, at least, 10 download and maybe 7 upload or whatever they're providing nowadays. Most people can't afford they can't afford a T1 connection, which is I don't know, 60 download and something upload. I don't remember what the exact speeds are. You can go research them yourself. Most people don't exactly have fast internet. The speed that I have, surprisingly enough, despite the fact the upload speed is kind of slow, actually does make for a good server, or that is to say, a good throughput speed. Throughput is how the data, again, it's a technical term referring to how fast the data is sent and received between the client computer and the server side. So it's something to look into. There's a couple websites you can go to test your speed. One I like personally, I think it's speakeasy.net/speed test. I'll put a link to the description below so you can go check out your upload and download speed. That should give you a pretty fair idea of what your internet speed is. There's different methods of testing your internet speed, and there's no one good method of doing it. It just depends on who you feel like gives you the better results of your internet connection. So what I'm going to do is now, I'm going to take the camera over to the server, and I'm just going to sort of show you what it looks like, and sort of just give you an idea of what you'd be looking at and what have you. So, alright, so here we are looking at my server computer here. So, in case you were wondering exactly what does a server computer look like, it kind of basically looks like your basic desktop app or desktop. So that's what all the inside of it is. This is the processor here, this is the hard drive and memory and all that kind of stuff. It just looks like a typical desktop application. These are my two Minecraft servers, and actually I believe, let me check the one. So this computer, if I can get rid of this stupid message here, this computer, I think according to what I'm getting from the plugin called Lag Meter, I'm about running, it looks like about 1 gig of RAM, and on my other computer, other server here, I'm running about 2 gigabytes of RAM. So essentially I'm using 3 gigabytes, but again, it depends on the amount of RAM that you can assign, depends on, first of all, the operating system itself, and also how much RAM you actually have installed in the computer. So the more RAM that you have installed on the computer, obviously the more RAM you can dedicate to your server. Now, let me show you a little bit here. Now, the reason why I'm filming the screen and not actually using screen capture software is that there is no screen capture software for 2003 server, at least not from what I have found. So allow me to noobishly show you Task Manager here. I'm actually going to try to carefully zoom in on this so you can actually see what this looks like. So according to Task Manager, If I can zoom in very, very carefully. Bear with me a little bit here while I get this straightened out. Alright, so this is sort of the reverse, but the computer says I'm running using about 1.71 gigabytes of RAM, and my processors are fairly low. The only time that the processors ever peg is when I'm actually rebooting the servers. Let me actually zoom out here. So that's the only time I'm actually, what these would actually peg up is when I'm either reloading or someone logs in. So despite those little anomalies, it's not really that big of a deal. Let me zoom out here a little bit here. Oh, don't you love operating Karen by yourself, huh? So, yeah, it's just basically a server is just basically a typical desktop setup like this. Now, you can go and buy a server itself. Like there's actually some Dell, I think it's the Dell Powers. I can't think what they're called. But anyway, Dell sells some really nice servers that you can probably, at basic specs, I think you can probably buy for about $600 or so. And that's not that bad considering what computers are running nowadays. That's probably about typical. So let's talk about pricing for a computer. Really good computers are running about, I think at the most I've seen about $430, maybe up to like 500 and above. The higher quality specs you have, the more money you're going to pay, obviously. So this computer here, probably for its specs and at the time, probably would have been about a $200 or so computer, I suppose. I was fortunate to have this computer given to me by a friend of mine. And actually also too, let me talk a little bit back about storing of your data. So I'm going to move my camera over here. So this hard drive here has all of this data that you see up on here. Let me close Task Manager here. Now, I think I talked a little bit earlier about, or if I didn't, I will now, about how and where do you store your server data. It doesn't honestly matter. This hard drive is running off of USB, and it gets really good. It actually performs quite well. This is USB 2.0, I might add. So, because this computer does not support 3.0, it's an older computer. So this hard drive is plugged in via USB in the back of the computer, and it loads well, it performs really well, and I might actually take some in-game footage of one of the actual servers and show you how well the performance is. Now, that doesn't go without saying that the amount of FPS that you get on Minecraft, that's not affected by the server, that's actually affected by your computer. So if you're running Minecraft client on the different computer that's running your server and your FPS is like really low, that's not the server, that's actually you. It is. If you actually do the research, that actually is what the problem is. How you can tell you have good server performance is, say, if you're picking at a piece of stone in Minecraft, okay, and if the block breaks and it drops immediately, and you're able to pick it up, and you don't see any like back framing, which is where and this is a non-technical term, this is a term I made up. I'll call back framing as being that if you pick at the block and if the block like disappears and reappears and disappears again, that means you have a laggy server. That means that the server is not performing as well as it should, and there's optimization issues that you need to look into. So that's what that's all about. So let's talk about custom IP addresses. So how do you obtain a custom IP address? One of several ways. I'll talk about how I got mine. There is a service out there by a company called, I believe they're called NoIP, and it's no-ip, and I'll put a link to their website in the description below the video. So NoIP allows you to have a custom IP address basically for free. The limit is 3, so if you're going to have a custom IP address, make sure you pick one that you're going to use and keep. You can, of course, go to their website, manage your account, change IP address, and get a different one. The one I use is gridhosting.no-ip.biz : and then the port number. And actually I'll talk about port numbers too I'll talk about that in the last section of this video. So, NoIP allows me to have a custom IP address because what they do is there's actually a piece of software to which I'll quickly show you here. Allow me to bring this up. You should be able to hopefully see it in the... If not, allow me to zoom in. You can actually see what this looks like. Trying to keep... There we go. Hold on. Alrighty. Again, I'm sorry that the image is flipped. It's just how the video is transferring stuff. So this is NoIP's, what they call their DUC, or Dynamic Update Client. What this does is every 5 minutes, the DUC software will check to see what my custom IP address is. And because I'm signed in on my account with them, they know that these IP addresses are assigned to my account. So if I go to select hosts, you can see the different hosts I have. So I have Grid Hosting, I have Metro Nations, and I have Projects by Josh. So those are my 3 custom domain addresses. So every 5 minutes, the software will check what my public IP address is, and it goes to the NoIP servers and says, well, this is what his current external IP address is. And they'll be like, oh, okay, well, we know this is tied to his account, this is what his IP address is, and these IP addresses that he has are still valid. And that is to say that they are usable. And that is how you have a custom IP address. The reason why I wanted to talk about that is that I remember seeing some footage from Minecon where people were talking about how that home-hosted servers are really like not the way to go, and you can't make them successful, yada yada. Well, I respectfully disagree, because obviously, as I've shown you, that is indeed possible to run a good home Minecraft server. So that's how that works. The last section I'm going to talk about, and I promise this should be the last thing, is talking about touching briefly on port forwarding, explained why I said colon and then the port number. So allow me to explain that. When you run a Minecraft server, every server has a port number. This port number can range from being 25565 to 25563, or any port number you can possibly think of. I happen to go in series, so I go 255, 63, 62, and 61. It's just I'm just counting down, and I choose the higher range because by default Bukkit's port is 25563, and that's the one that I wanted to use. So I just sort of descend from there. So when I go to type in gridhosting.no-ip.biz colon 25562. What is really super cool, and I love this about Minecraft and Bukkit and routers and all that good stuff, is that what you're telling Minecraft to do is that there's an IP address, and it points to this computer. Now this computer's port forwarded, obviously, and I actually just realized I should probably put the cover back on this, so I'm going to talk about this while I do this. So this server has at least about, I don't know, 8 or so ports that are assigned to it, and when my friends go to connect to these ports, they're essentially going to get routed to one or two of these servers. Why is the screw not going in here? Alright, there we go. So this server, I believe, is 25562. No, this is 63 and this is 62. So I'm going to type in no-ip.biz colon 25562 or 63 or whatever, or what have you. And the router, your router, will know which computer to point to because you've specified in your router settings the computer that you want to have port forwarded. So for instance, and I won't say what the internal address is of my computer just for the sake of argument, so for instance, I told the computer, okay, this computer here that we're looking at is going to have these series of port numbers, and Bukkit uses 2 port protocols. One of them is called a TCP, and the other one is called a UDP. I don't remember what they stand for, but you can certainly Google them. And again, I'm gonna have so many links to put in the description, it'll be ridiculous. There'll be like, hopefully, a wealth of information for you guys, and that's the point of this video, is to be a wealth of information. So Bukkit uses these two port protocols. A UDP actually is used for game servers. Minecraft is obviously a game, and for some of us a coding platform. Depends on who you are. So UDP is usually used for video games. A TCP is used for traffic and transferring of data and stuff. So this computer has both, and it has like 6 of them because there's one port for each server, but there's 2 entries per server, so you end up with 6 ports. And basically you can port forward a computer as many times as you want. Now the only thing is you do run into a security risk. The reason is that there are some noobs that are sitting out there with port scanners, seeing what ports are open. They're like, oh, this port's open, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna hack your computer for whatever reason. I feel like going crazy right now. I'll just explain. This is the hacker. I'm gonna go hack your computer. Get a life, first of all. Secondly, you have to be careful about that because you do open yourself up for a security risk, because some hacker's gonna sit there and be like, okay, well this is the ports I found. I'm gonna go attack these computers. I'm gonna find their network and everything else. So please, before you port forward, please make sure you have good security protection and you know what you're doing. This is not for, I mean, the likelihood of you getting DDoSed, you can just rotate your IP address. Here's the downside to this. First of all, DDoSing is illegal, straight up. Okay, it's illegal to do it. Don't ever do it. Don't ever try it. You can actually get blacklisted and never be allowed. Your internet service provider can actually keep you from going to the internet. Don't ever do it. Okay, never. Secondly, the only thing about having an IP address that never changes is that you are subject to that. Unfortunately, I'm subject to it just like anybody else who runs a home hosted server. My only advantage is that I could, of course, change my address and get a different, I could basically disable one of my, trying to think of the term right now. I could disable one of my IP addresses and say, look, this is not being used anymore. So that's one of the things that you are going to run into. It's a risk you take. But there are certain security measures that you can do. One of them is called I think it's called a HoneyPot and stuff. You can go look up that. Basically, you make a fake computer that looks like the actual target computer, and it protects you and stuff. This is all general information. This is nothing like, oh, he's telling us a big secret. No, this is just general stuff. It's out there, and it's out there on Google and what have you. So that's one of the issues that you run into. So make sure, please ask your parents before you start port forwarding, because I don't want some kid like watching this be like, oh, I'm gonna port forward, and then they end up getting DDoS, and your parents are like, what did you do? Please don't do that. Okay, ask your parents for permission first. Make sure it's okay. I am not responsible if you get hacked or whatever reason. Make sure that the visibility of other computers on your network is not possible through your router. And each router is different, so I'm not going to go into exactly how to do that because I don't know what type of router. The people who are watching this, I don't know what type of router you all will have, so that's just based on, if you can, look up the manual for your router, learn how to do it, and learn how to do it safely. If you have, I'm so sorry. If you have one computer that's port forwarded, hopefully that's like the only computer that will, be visible. It's a risk that you take. I had to get comfortable with port forwarding when I first got into Bukkit servers, and it took a while to convince my parents to do it, to let me do it. So, but once I did, I knew what I was doing. I was like, oh, okay, this is how this works and everything. Oh my gosh, cold stink. So, anyway, I'm going to try to sum up basically what we talked about. So basically we talked about hardware, we talked about operating systems, we talked about Bukkit servers, we talked about port forwarding, running servers, the RAM usage, talked about hardware. There's a lot of dust on this, I just noticed, sorry. I'm OCD. Anyway, so I hope that after watching this video, you have a really, really good understanding of what makes a good Minecraft server. If you guys want, I could perhaps try making a video about how to start a Minecraft server, like the actual file structure and things like that. That's a little bit more difficult to do for me personally, because I just don't have, the only thing I have is fraps, and it only captures the game footage and stuff. So, anywho, that is, I believe, that concludes my guide to the most complete video about establishing a Minecraft server. I know it was lengthy, but I really hope you made it toward the end. If you did, you are awesome, and I hope you subscribe to my channel, because you're awesome. Thank you for watching. I will try to remember to put every single link that I mentioned in the description below. If I didn't, please tell me, and I can try to maybe point you towards some resources if you want. A little side note, referring to my channel specifically, I am trying to upload things as I'm able to have time for things. I'm still in school, so I have to make sure I dedicate more time to school and stuff, and editing for me, it takes a little bit longer for me to do things. That's why I only post things sort of like every couple of weeks, or maybe even a couple of months. It just depends on what I feel like I have time for and what I feel like I want to dedicate time for. For those of you who have subscribed, thank you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please comment as much as you want with questions. I will do my best to answer them. If you want to ask me questions on Twitter, you can tweet at me at Josh_grid21, and I can try to answer questions the best I can. If you want to see, like, I guess you want to see examples of what it's like on a home-hosted server, I can put the IP address to one of my servers, and you can look at it yourself. I have 4 minutes on battery. If I finish on time, that'll be amazing. Sorry, I just noticed that. Anyway, so thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry if it seemed lengthy, but I wanted to make sure that I covered as much as possible, like that this would be most detailed possible. So, without further ado, again, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.